What's good, everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to how does the twisted sword in Deltarune actually work? Now, I don't recall what the twisted sword really is, so I'm kind of curious what's going on about right here. So, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided down below. Support the content that's provided. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when a new video comes out. And in the comment section below, if you have any videos you want me to react to, leave it down there and I'll react to it as soon as possible. The link to this video will be down in the description below. So if you want to see the original video without me talking or interrupting here and there, and all this stuff, then go ahead and do that. Other than that, let's start this video, shall we?
Oh wow, I didn't realize how convoluted the script for killing enemies is until I needed footage of it. Should I add an explanation about how this works? It's probably fine. It's not like there's any confusion or misconceptions about what deals fatal damage in.
In Deltarune, there's a mysterious, unobtainable item called the Twisted Sword, a deadly weapon thought to only be crafted at the end of the Weird Route. It supposedly has massive amounts of power and the ability to actually kill enemies before they can even run away.
Oh no.
So we really do have a genocide route.
Okay, listen carefully. I'm about to be firing a lot of shots into someone's hard work, and I need you all to understand. I don't want you to send any hate to Mystic Slime over this. People make mistakes. I have made lots of mistakes. Just last video, I claimed the data mining community had always known about the Chapter 1 death animation, even though we actually didn't realize it was there until Chapter 2 came out. And let me tell you, there is nothing worse than realizing I messed up, and now I have to live with my erroneous results being on the internet, generating confusion and anger, forever. So when I saw this video, I reached out to Mystic Slime to check, and I can now say with certainty that no, he had no intention of misleading any of you. Do not leave angry comments. Do not harass people. No one will be depressed. Show some
That
humans.
kinda is true.
All that said, no, the Twisted Sword does not kill enemies in any chapter of Deltarune. Mystic Slime was using a mod someone else made, and it seems like there was a miscommunication about how precisely that mod works. But don't take my word for it. You can test this for yourself by hopping over to the Spammed and Save editor.
Okay.
If you don't trust that, you can also just open up your old Chapter 2 save file in Notepad, scroll down to line 376, and change that number to an 11. Bam! Now you have the Twisted Sword, and you can see for yourself that if you use it in battle. Well, that's disappointing. But why does this happen? Well, it's a bit complicated, but basically, when an enemy runs out of HP, it runs this script right here, which checks two things. First, is the monster frozen? If yes, end the battle by freezing. If the monster is not frozen, then check number 2. Is it under the fatal condition? As you can see in the description, Snowgrave does fatal damage, which means when you kill
Okay.
it sets the fatal variable to true, and thus, when it runs out of HP, it dies. But suppose we decrease the damage of Snowgrave. If it's taken fatal damage, but something else deals the finishing blow, does it die? No. What if we do it in the same turn? Still.
No.
But why? Well, seems like Toby thought of that. Because after you cast Snowgrave, the spell also runs this line here to check if the monster was killed by that attack, and if it wasn't, it switches the fatal condition back off. So why am I bothering to frame this as if it were a status effect instead of a type of damage? Because Peepus. Peepus enemies always have the fatal condition, which means any attack that doesn't freeze them will always kill them. Will this matter later? I have no idea, but I
Maybe.
thought I'd mention it in case Toby tries to bait us into using Pacify later. Anyway, as you can see, these are the only two ways to deal fatal damage at the moment.
Okay. So fail damage. So the ways to do fail damage is using Snowgrave and Peepus. Okay, so this means that nothing in Deltarune can be killed unless it's a Peepus or you use Snowgrave because of all these conditions within it. Okay, I see.
You either have to cast Snowgrave or you need to be fighting Peepus. But if that's the case, then how did I get that footage of me dealing a fatal hit in Chapter 1? Well, fatal wasn't a variable back then, but the death animation was. So I just kinda replaced the defeat animation with the death animation. And now, when you hit things, they die. But this only happens with mods. So why do people assume otherwise?
Okay.
Well, I see two reasons for this. First, this weapon is clearly only obtainable if you've started the weird route. Since said route seems to be this game's murder route, it makes sense to assume the weapon is some kind of evil murder weapon. When you show it to the other party members, they express concern and describe it as looking scary, bad, and, like a spiral, apparently. Although, it should also be noted that the Devil's Knife is also treated as evil by the other party members, even though one of the uses for it is to raise Susie's magic and therefore increase the strength of her healing. As for the Twisted Sword, although it does not have the literal game-breaking stats shown in this mod, it does have the highest attack so far, which does make it the best item for violence.
Okay.
It isn't capable of dealing lethal damage, presuming Toby doesn't patch that later. However, I would like to point out that dealing damage is not always framed as evil in the world of Deltarune. In Chapter 1, Susie saves us from the king by casting Root Buster, and she does it again to save Noelle from these werewires. And even in Undertale, violence is still sometimes necessary to proceed, even for pacifism, so things aren't so black and white. In fact, if we look at Undertale's genocide-exclusive weapon, the real knife actually makes most enemies instantly spareable, and thus makes the pacifist run much, much easier, should you find a way to hack or glitch it in. And I've found in my own experimentation,
Really?
the Twisted Sword is also great for cutting through the Queen's shield, so you can focus more of your TP on saving Birdley. But what about this transability that this sword has? Doesn't that make it evil? After all, its same
Trance.
ability is the Thorn Ring, and all available evidence seems to suggest that trance was the ability that made it even easier for us to control Noelle. As after this point of the game, she does seem to be in something of a trance, especially here, where she fails to recognize Birdley, and then again in battle, when her eyes become blank and pupilless, like she's under a spell. She also seems to be in some sort of a fuzzy, almost blackout state once the spell is over. And, to be clear, I know Noelle displays some of this sort of behavior long before we get the ring, but my point here isn't that the ring is literally controlling Noelle, just that it's making her easier to control. Sort of like it's amplifying our voice for her, which happens to be extra effective because she's already particularly attuned to hearing us and to doing whatever she's told, in contrast to Susie, who isn't. But I digress. If trance increases the player's control over the character, does this mean the Twisted Sword will make Chris even easier for us to control? But wait a second. That's a down arrow next to the trance ability, so it should do the opposite, right? Or, wait. Some of you think this is a placeholder? Okay, I'll check the code. Just for you, Pumpkin. Okay, so if we look here in the weapon info script, we can see the third line from the bottom is the weapon ability icon.
Weapon ability icon.
Draw a little down arrow next to the Buster for the Devil's Knife, a little up arrow next to the trefoil to let you know it increases the money received, and a little smiley face swinging next to the ability for the cheer scarf because Toby likes messing with us, apparently. Regarding the Twisted Sword, we can
That's
see
true.
this isn't a holdover from a previous script, as it does actually specifically call for icon 6, which is the down arrow. And I'm pretty confident that's not a placeholder variable because, for one, Toby already has a placeholder for these sorts of scenarios, in the form of a 0, as seen when equipping the main axe, the red scarf, and the wood blade. So it's not like Toby would need to pick an icon at random, and it's very odd to me to assume that this would be a mistake. Even if you want to argue that a 0 wouldn't work, because this weapon has an actual ability, why would Toby not just reuse the ring icon he used for the Thorn Ring? Or he could just use the sword icon, which would be even easier, since he literally has it right there for easy reference in the line right above this one. I mean, it could still be
Really?
a mistake, right? Like maybe he just really likes the number 6 because Gaster. But I don't think so. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd like to present a pair of guesses about why this
Okay.
could be intended to reduce Chris's trance. Theory 1. The Twisted Sword is for a redemption arc.
Redemption.
Then that's 5 more chapters to turn ourselves away from the soul and terrible path we've started down. The thorn
I mean,
after all, exclusive to a completed
it makes sense,
It's an item you can get without killing Birdley.
but I highly doubt that if it has the trance ability.
In fact, Noel leaves the party immediately after using it in a full weird run, so we aren't even sure if we'll be able to get this item back from her outside of an aborted weird route. Perhaps, then, this item is meant to be combined with the pure crystal as an act of redemption, to purify our souls and wash away the stain of our sins. The pure crystal itself is said to be made from a shadow crystal that was purified by the cat. After all, in an Undertale's genocide route, we actually have a lot of chances to turn back and end the route, even as far as Hotland. So perhaps this item is intended for those
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
runners like myself. Or, theory 2, the Twisted Sword is for Chris to take back control from the player. Because
Ooh, now that sounds interesting.
implications that Chris doesn't like what we're doing. We can
Obviously.
text implying Chris and Birdley used to be friends. In the way Susie and Ralph say respond to seeing Chris's expression after Birdley is frozen, apparently Chris appears to be in quite a bit of pain after what we just put them through, and in Chris's refusal to leave the player alone with Susie and Noel a few minutes later, despite Ralph's repeated prompting. And of course, there's the scene later in the hospital where Noel talks about how Chris has been acting very differently, and although we are clearly still able to control Chris enough to dictate their speech and other basic behaviors, Susie still informs us that when it comes to their expression, Chris definitely doesn't seem to be very enthusiastic about what's happening. A sentiment which is in great contrast to Undertale's murder route, in which Carol was infamous for sporting a creepy smile, especially during cutscenes such as this one. If you think of the weird route as us, the players, slowly corrupting and taking control of these characters, then the Twisted Sword might be a tool for Chris to fight back, to shake off the trance that compels them to obey us, and scare away enemies with powerful melee attacks, just like Susie did in Chapter 1, warning them to stay away from us before we have the time to build up enough TP and cast any more of those deadly, fatal spells. Sorry to rain on this parade, though. I have to admit it would be pretty fun to run through the whole game with the Twisted Sword. If only there were some way to patch Chapter 1 to obtain it. Too bad I'm not a coder. Ha! Ha ha.
Many hours later.
Okay, hold up for a second. So I was trying to figure out how to place a treasure chest here, right? So I could put the Twisted Sword in it, and I need to talk about this, because this is so weird. So normally the way treasure chests work is, they check which room you're in, and assign the item you find in the box based on that, right? So
Okay.
the second box in this room, it will contain a second Ragger, because that's what the code says belongs in this room, yes? And, remember when I did that Connor code video, and I spoke about all these creepy messages that exist as sort of the default placeholder code cases, where the code is run outside of
I believe so, yeah.
rooms and scenarios. You're never going to believe what Toby said to be the placeholder for the treasure chests. It's the freaking white ribbon. You know, the white ribbon. The one Noel says looks familiar. The one that's sitting right next to this sign that says, "Help, I'm lost." This is the Lost Girls ribbon. You cannot convince me otherwise.
Are you serious?
The ribbon is in Chapter 1 as well, but it's also unused. What? What? Oh god, this video is gonna be late, isn't it? Have I mentioned I'm not a coder? Yes? Okay, good. Now here, take this mod that I just blindly stitched together, and, okay, look me in the eye for a second, and listen closely. I tried to alter as little as possible, but I have never made a mod before in my entire life, so if this doesn't work, I'm not fixing it. Deal? Deal. Check the Patreon for downloads, or if you can't afford it, you can also just watch my Twitch stream of it in the link below. Now then, what do you think? Will the Twisted Sword twist Chris into a perfectly obedient puppet, or will it help him cut the strings?
That's,
The white ribbon like this as yet another callback to Des, or is this purely a coincidence? Did you spot something I missed, or have a novel experience with one of the unused items unlocked in this patch? Let me know
Not
down in the comments
really.
below, and until next time.
Okay, so that was an interesting piece of evidence to put together. Now, the Twisted Sword is an item, apparently. So I never really heard of it. That's good. That would mean I did not miss anything. But from what it looks like, it was something that got patched up. So yeah, there's some interesting thoughts that come with the Twisted Sword, to be honest. Redemption, or Chris using it to kill us. So many things to think about when it comes to the subject. Yeah, I highly doubt that any of them are true. But the white ribbon actually being part of something that involves December. I'm intrigued. And now I gotta consider all these facts and stuff. Hmm. This code talk was interesting though. So you can't really kill characters unless it's a Peepus or you use Snowgrave. And the fact that that's mentioned makes me wonder, in future chapters, is there going to be a case where other characters or there's going to be other methods on when we're going to kill someone? Because that kind of sounds like what's being implied here. So that's something to really think about as well. But yeah, other than that, hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button, be notified immediately when a new video comes out. Tell me your thoughts on this in the comment section below, once again. And finally, the link to this video will be down in the description below, so be sure to give the creator some love and support for the video they made. Other than that, hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!